Are we activating? I'm just recording this, upload it, people can watch it later. I was watching this video about, the AI waifus and all that. And this is nothing new in the alternative world, the concept of digital assistants, digital companions and all this. What I thought was funny about it was the concept of, people paying a service so they can have a decent conversation. And it's like, yeah. Much like the name of this, almost like love has a subscription fee. But where am I going with this? Well, I'm going to do a little bit of a deep dive into this. This is Freedom Phil. Like and subscribe. Let's get into it, and I'll always turn up the video speed. And why do I say that? Because let's be real about it. You should be watching videos faster. You should be watching this at 1.75. Let's get into it. So I think it's a little funny how, how as the world has a large amount of people, and to some degree excess people, the world has made a lot of people, frankly, unnecessary. And I don't say that in a bad way. It's just like in the past, warfare, disease wipes out so many people. Life was harder. People had to work together. We had to come together as a people more and more. In fact, there were times where you might have wanted to, okay, good example. If you ever watch Little House on the Prairie, even though there might be a thing here and there, the community always has to come together because in times of need, you got to work together. We are far past that these days. As I've said many a times, once upon a time, we used to have neighborhoods. Now we're just people living in houses next to each other. Some people are like, oh, that's that couple over there. Those are those motherfuckers over there. We don't live in a cohesive world anymore. And more, particularly the plight of young men and even some women, it's a situation where people who are socially exiled, frankly, for stupid reasons. One could even argue a lot of the conformity that we saw ages ago was simply to survive. Did you really believe in this cause, this church, this mosque, whatever? Or did you go along with what your social group said in order to fit in? And that's something you really had to put in perspective about it. We now live in a world where you can be an individual, but there's a price to freedom in that respect as well. If you don't happen to be part of the group, part of the social conformity, people will treat you as an outsider. So bringing this back to the price of love and all that, let's analyze for a second what love is. How much of relationships, whether it's romantic or just normal relationships, about when it comes to the concept of love, is really simply something to keep you from being bored, alone, what do they call it, ennui, something like that, the French word for it, intense boredom, ennui. How much do you pay in your life to avoid that feeling? And then, of course, there's a reproductive urge as well, where basically your genetics are telling you, hey, go make more of you, go make more of these. So you get together and you look at the cost and the time and the effort put into all this. Which, interesting enough, if you had taken that same amount of time and dedicated to something else, not to rip off Aaron Clarey, but he's absolutely right about this. If you took all the money and time that you were putting into going out on dates or focusing on something that has really very little benefit, if you think about it long term from a compound interest standpoint, and you focused on improving yourself, better degree, or trade, or just put in an extra shift and then invested the money. He's absolutely right. If you look at the dividends compound interest-wise over the long term, you would retire quite young. As where, for social cohesion, conformity, and access to box reproduction, mostly men, for the most part, how often do you see that most men effectively give up how much of their young life just to be part of the group in order to get access to box? So what happens when you have a large amount of society that is frankly, substandard? You see the individuals that really refer to themselves as incels, the black hole, the inkwell. And then, of course, you are running into some women that have mental issues as well. They call them femcells. And I have a hard time, actually, I happen to believe that ages ago, they used to refer to this as TFLs, true forced loneliness. I mean, to be honest, if you really just got to get, take a dip in the well, you can save up your money and go to Pahrump. But that's not the same. That's not what a lot of people want. They want that interaction, relationship. And for women, well, I don't know. I mean, considering all you have to do is, I swear to God, it really is like that Nature Habits video of the, was it the call of the three-toed claws? I can't find a guy. Oh, it's not that hard. You got to put yourself out there. And she does the scream. And then all these guys just fall through the deal. So that's why I take a lot of women to say on the femcel. It's just like, I'm sorry, that's gooner bait. Let's be honest about that. But all the same, though, there is a hollowness to modern society. And when you realize that most relationships, they're either, to some degree, resources, fun, allaying boredom, loneliness. At some point, once you get to the position where you look at the world and say, well, wait a minute. If I have something more productive to do with my day, like not just productive for production's sake, but like something you're really looking forward to doing, if I'm occupied, then I'm not bored. And if you're not bored, you're not lonely. And when you start converting that line of thinking over to so many other things and think to yourself, how often did the individual have to be social conforming just to get away from escape loneliness? How much price did they pay over the course of life for that? Bringing it back to the original statement. Life, time, conformity, sacrifice, the time that you could have achieved incredible things. So we'll bring it back to the concept where they talk about waifus and stuff. In a world where basically how much social conformity is pretty much expected, thrust upon you, and not as bad as it was in the past, but now it's more of a choice and option and whatnot. Now it's like, well, if you're going to exile people to some degree, these people can build replacements for people. I mean, if all a relationship is past the access to box, is resources and entertainment, there's lots of ways you can get off. Let's be real about that. And as far as resources, well, you come out ahead if you don't have to deal with organics, meat bags. But people say, well, is this fulfilling? Let me ask you something. Let's say you're doing something on your own. Is it fulfilling? Let's say you go hiking, hike a mountain. Well, you were on your own. Is that fulfilling? Did you enjoy hiking that mountain? Let's say you're a craftsman and you want to make yourself your own boat. You took the time and enjoyed making the boat. Were you not satisfied when you created that? So many things in our lives, we're being told constantly that without other people around, we won't be satisfied. But I think it's sometimes the counter. It's because of the people we have around that we're not satisfied. In fact, it's that desire to win approval from other people that really causes a lot of pain. And what do I mean by that? I've seen people burn out. I've seen women, they get so much attention that it takes extraordinary things. Like the dopamine has been hit so many times that they can't love, hate. It takes something extraordinary to pop them out of their fucking day-to-day malaise. And then you see this with guys to some degree where it's like, how many hoops does that guy got to jump through before he's finally accepted to some degree? What if you never had to do any of that and you just avoided all of the price? There's a price to all that you gave away for social acceptance. And then you ask yourself, if it's really all about resources, entertainment, really entertainment, we could just render down most of love to being entertained. And I'm not the first to come up with this one. That TFM said this ages ago, that most of love is just hopeful projections. You hope the other person feels the way for you that you feel for them. And in that, how much do you sacrifice for that? Now, for the individual that's capable of sustaining themselves on their own, the concept of a digital companion isn't a far off thought. Think about like that movie Iron Man, Jarvis, an AI that you could actually have a conversation with that brings up useful things. Like, think about this for a second. You know how people used to sit down and read magazines or newspapers and books? To some degree, that's kind of like, it's this form of entertainment. Now imagine, instead of reading and sitting down like your grandfather did and reading the morning newspaper, I mean, God, that thing was thick. They really used to give you a lot for your money back then. You have this assistant that's basically has a number of lists of things that you like, and you could just be like, okay. push the button and recite this conversation. Are you not stimulated? And what is the price, inevitably, of this AI versus that conformity to society? Now, I understand that not everybody can do that. And I understand that most people wouldn't even want such an existence. But the reality is, whether you want to admit it or not, this hopeful projection that we force on everybody, well, you also won't admit, kind of like just like with nuclear power at times, what do you do with the radioactive hammer, the radioactive glove, not just the isotopes and the little fuel pellets. What do you do with this stuff? And what is the radioactive stuff? Those that are basically left behind. See, I advocate the concept that those that are left behind, you're better off learning to be self and the individual. Because inevitably, this society that you're trying to keep up with, trying to please make happy, but just how much more simping can you do for a society that deep in your heart, will throw you away the moment they don't need you. And if you don't believe me, go look at the number of people that are living on the street, that are homeless, that are men. And how many of those men happen to be veterans? Yeah, that'll get you thinking. That's why I always advocate for the empowerment of the individual. When I say retirement by 30, that's no joke. But part of it comes down to, if you're not carrying all the weight of social conformity and society, that price to be cared for and loved, you can do incredible things in record time. But the future's up to you. Peace.